Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Vishwakatu and this is VG Studios. If you're new here, I regularly make Python tutorials with the aim of teaching my viewers the basics of Python and to inspire more people to start coding. If you've been following along, in my previous video we talked about turtle graphics in Python, which is a bit more visual and it has graphics, so it was really fun. But in this video we're gonna do something a bit more serious. So today we shall learn about lists and list operations. A list in Python is basically a data structure that contains an ordered sequence of elements. These elements can be any strings, integers, float values, or even special characters. Elements are listed in square brackets and are separated by commas. Firstly, to create a list we should give it a name, and we should use square brackets to tell the computer that this is a list. We can add values into the square brackets and separate them using commas, and these will be the initial values of the list. If you want to access any of these, you can use what we call as index values of these to retrieve an element from a list. In this case, these elements are given the indices 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. To access the first element, you can say mylist of 0, and the same applies to the rest of the elements. Also, if you want to change that element, you simply say mylist of 0 is equal to, let's say, 4. This shall change the value stored in that index of my list. This index system may seem a bit similar to something you've seen before. Strings. Yeah. Strings also have indices for their values. For example, if a is equal to string, print a of 1 shall print the letter t. As similar as lists and strings are, there are two main differences between them. Firstly, lists are mutable and strings are immutable. This means that a value at a specific index of a list can be accessed as well as changed, but the value at a specific index of a string can only be accessed but not changed. Secondly, lists can hold any type of value at a specific index as long as the values are separated by commas. But this is not the case in a string. A string is simply a sequence of characters, meaning there's only a single character stored in a specific index. This means that if there's a list a is equal to 1.0, 2.0, and there's a string saying b is equal to 1.0, 2.0, print a of 0 shall print 1.0, but print b of 0 shall print 1. Another small addition that I would like to make is that if you want to access the list or string from the end instead of from the starting, you can simply use negative values for the index. For example, my list of -1 shall give the last value of the list. Going further, you can say -2, -3, and so on to give you the second last value, third last value, and so on. One other thing to remember while using the index values is that we shouldn't use an index value greater than the list, otherwise we shall encounter an error known as the out of range error. In case you have a pretty big list and are worried about counting the number of values in order to avoid this error, you needn't be scared. We can find the length of a string or a list by simply using this function, len of a. Hence, print len of my list should give you the length here. In case you want to print all the values of a list using a for loop, we learned about the range function for such tasks. However, we can use the index values of the list itself to make this task easier. This can be done in two ways. To print all the values in my list, we can either say, for I in range, len of my list, print my list of I. Or we can make it even simpler by saying, for I in my list, print I. Next, I would like to talk about list references and aliases. List references are the locations of the contents of a list, such as 0 in my list of 0 is simply the location of the first element of my list, but not the first element itself. Hence, when the list variable is myList, in this case when it's copied to another variable such as mySecondList like this, the secondList variable is known as an alias to the first one. Therefore, these are simply two references that we can use to access the same list that is saved inside the computer's memory, meaning that changing the value of myList of 0 shall change the value in the memory, so now mySecondList of 0 shall return the same value when printed. However, if you want to create a new list instead of creating two variables that refer to the same list, you can simply say mySecondList is equal to list of myList, and this shall create a second list that is saved in the computer's memory and has the same values as myList. Now let's talk about list operations. Let's say that you define a list and later on during the program you want to add another element to the list. You can simply add that element to the list by saying mylist.append any element that you want to add in this. Based on this operation, we can just create empty lists in the program and append elements to them whenever we like or whenever we need to. But now let's say you want your list to be in a specific order and you want to insert a new element in a specific position of the list. You can simply say mylist.insert to, the element that you want. Let's say hello, to insert the element in the position that you want it to be in. Next, if you have added many elements into the list and you want to know if there's a specific element in the list without having to go through the entire list, you can simply find it like this. If hello in my list, print element found, and in case you want the index of the element, you can simply say print mylist dot index of hello. So far, we've only talked about adding elements to a list, but let's say that you want to remove an element from a list. In that case, you can simply say mylist.pop the index of the element that you want to remove. In this case, let's just say 0 to delete that element at the index 0. Note that this shall move the indices of the elements after this value back by 1. Other list operations include concatenation. You can add two lists like this. Our list is equal to my list plus your list. Replication. You can replicate a list like this. My list is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3 times 2. Equality and inequality testing. You can check if a list is equal or not equal to another list like this. My list is equivalent to your list and my list is not equivalent to your list. There are also mathematical list operations such as sum, maximum and minimum of a list. These can be found like this: sum of, max of and min of. Values of a list can also be sorted by using the sort function like this: mylist dot sort of. Lastly, you can slice a list. If you want to create a list using the first 5 elements only of my list, you can simply say first 5 is equal to my list to 5, and this shall give the first 5 elements of the list, which does not include the index 5, by the way. It would only be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 indices. And in case you want the last 5 elements, you can simply say my list of 5 and my list of 1 to 4 for the elements from the indices 1 to 3. You can even change multiple values at once like this: my list of 1 to 4 is equal to 12, 32, 54. So today we learned about lists, indices, and elements, the relationship between lists and strings, list references and aliases, and finally, list operations. With this, we're done with today's video. But this is quite a long chapter, so we shall take a few more videos to finish the entire lists. I hope you liked my video. And if you learned something new today, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment suggestions for the next videos. And if you feel you have friends who would be interested in learning coding too, please do share my video. Thank you.